A Dragon with Feathery Wings, Episode 4, Imp-Perfect Solutions to Minor Problems. The mining city of Rastoc was a bustling melting pot filled with races from every corner of the globe. It wasn't the largest city, but it was a popular travel stop because of the gorgeous masonry on nearly every building. Mining towns aren't usually known for being so affluent, but Rastoc's mines were so overabundant with precious metals and jewels that many laborers had migrated there in hopes of finding lucrative work. When the mining jobs filled up, the more clever among the ersatz workforce began to ply other trades, from stonemasons to blacksmiths to gem cutters, and the city quickly grew as a hub to find any manner of item made with the utmost craftsmanship. Karana was ecstatic they had finally arrived here. The villagers of New Gensha had done their best to accommodate the travelers, but the resources were scarce. Now that they were in a big city, Karana could finally have a good night's rest on a real bed and take a long bath. She still wasn't convinced she'd gotten all the bog muck from behind her ears. "All right, fellas," Karana announced to Ren and Haru as they stepped through the city gates. "I'm heading straight to the inn and taking a freaking bath. I'll have them reserve a room for you two while I'm at it, so you can take your time enjoying the city." "Thank you," Haru said as Karana practically skipped away. He turned to Ren. "I've got some shopping to do. I can finally replace the sword you broke in half. Will you be joining me?" "I'll catch up with you later," Ren smiled. "I want to walk around the city a bit and see the sights." With that, the three of them parted ways. Ren was amazed at how clean the city was kept. He expected coal dust and errant pickaxes to litter the streets, but the roads and buildings were all kept pristine. As Ren passed by a mine entrance, someone called out to him. "Hey, you're a pretty big guy." Ren looked to see a large, sweaty man with a thick beard and a broad smile. "I guess so. You feel like making a few gold?" the miner asked, wiping his forehead with a towel he wore around his neck. "One of my workers hurt his back, so I could use an able body to haul some stuff for a few hours." Ren shrugged. He couldn't help but want to help people in need. "Sure, why not?" He hopped over the fence separating him from the miner and wasted no time getting to work. Haru, meanwhile, walked through the sales district, eyeing the wares of the merchants along the street. He could surely buy a decent sword from a blacksmith, but quality weapons weren't cheap. He surmised that he may be able to fashion his own weapon using magic if he could procure the materials and save himself some money. It wasn't long before he found what he was looking for, a young merchant, seemingly a Govala, as evidenced by his cat-like ears and tail. He barely seemed old enough to be out on his own, let alone running a street stall. Regardless, he had what Haru needed. Various raw materials, steel, gold, leather, and most of the other things he would need. "Will this shop's owner be back soon, kid?" Haru asked, assuming he was an assistant watching the shop for his boss or a parent. "I am the merchant, buddy," the kid boasted. "And I'm no kid. Just never quite grew into myself is all. Name's Ket, traveling merchant. Better prices you won't find anywhere else. As long as you don't look 2 stalls down." "Kidding, of course. What can I get for you?" Haru was already annoyed by this fast-talking miscreant. But he wasn't lying when he said his prices were low. Low enough that it gave Haru pause. He could tell the materials were real, no illusion magic or lookalikes, which would mean... "How did you get these?" Haru asked. "I would think in a mining city like this, the miners would have established chains of operation. Surprising to see so many raw materials in the hands of a traveling merchant." Ket let out an exasperated gasp. "Are you, perchance, accusing me of getting my goods through illicit channels, sir? I would never." Yeah, he definitely stole these. "Look, if it makes you feel better, I can tell you I got them legally, eh?" Haru sighed. He didn't really want to give this scoundrel his business, but he was also technically out of work, so he didn't have the finances to be picky. "Alright, fine, you win." He paid the eager Govala and took the items he needed. "Thank you for your custom. Hope to see you again." Ket grinned as Haru walked off. Now that he had the materials, Haru just needed to find a place to perform his alchemy. He kept an all-purpose magic circle on the back of his right glove, but for something as intricate as a sword, it would be better to tailor a circle to his specific needs. And it wasn't like there was any rush. He saw an open slot of real estate on the side of the street next to a man peddling his wares on a small square carpet. As he walked past, an item he was selling caught his eye, a round sapphire with a magic circle embedded. He crouched down to get a closer look. "How much?" he asked the peddler, motioning to the stone. When he looked up and met eyes with the peddler, he was shocked at what he saw. The man was an angel, but his skin was deathly pale, his shaggy hair was stark white, and his face was covered in black markings. It wouldn't have been odd to see an orc or Shaktal with facial tattoos, but this wasn't what those were. Haru had read about this in history books, an ancient angel ritual in which they marked the skin of an exile, but that hadn't been practiced for thousands of years, so what was this guy doing with these markings all over him? Good eye. Haru was snapped back to reality as the man stared back at him with calm red eyes. I could part with it for 2 gold. The man seemed friendly enough. Maybe he just tattooed himself in that way as homage to his ancestors or something like that. A little steep for 1 gem. How about 1 gold? Haru countered. 1 gold, 50 silver. Final offer, the man smiled. Deal. Haru took the gem and handed the peddler his money. Can I interest you in anything else? The peddler asked, gesturing to his other wares. Haru had been so enamored with the sapphire he hadn't realized that everything else laid out on the carpet was religious paraphernalia. Cruche necklaces, a statue of the goddess Havana, a few copies of the Tal, the Milanist holy book, and other various Milanist sundries. Great. He'd accidentally run into a religious nut. No thanks. Haru shook his head. I'm not a believer. In Havana or in anything? Why? Haru frowned. He would rather not listen to this guy try and sell his religion to him. Just curious. I believe in science, in facts, and the pursuit of knowledge. Religion and blind faith aren't really for me. I hear you, the man said, raising his hands in mock surrender. I know you wouldn't expect it from someone selling all this stuff, but I understand that religion isn't for everyone. It was trying to push their faith on others that started the First Cruciate. Haru knew from his history books that the First Cruciate was a civil war in Engelon, thousands of years ago, in which the Milanists rose up against the ruling Havanists. Though Haru thought it ridiculous, as the 2 faiths were nearly identical, the only difference being that Milanists believed the prophet Milan had been the lover of the goddess Havana. Many scholars consider this to be the turning point from prehistory to history in the eastern continent, as the Milanists burned the libraries and tomes that had been kept throughout the country, and essentially wiped the slate clean, nearly erasing Havanism from history. Haru was surprised at how sensible this man was. Most Milanists either tried to pretend the Cruciates didn't exist, or made excuses about how the people were oppressed and well within their rights to revolt. You mind if I set up here? Haru asked, gesturing to the open space near the peddler. Go for it, buddy, he smiled. Mind if I ask your name? Haru. Haru said as he pulled a roll of parchment paper from his bag and spread it on the ground. You can call me Otto, the peddler said, watching Haru work. Sounded like a fake name, but Haru wasn't one to talk. Everyone had things they'd rather keep secret. He wasn't about to judge. Nice to meet you, Otto. Haru said half-heartedly as he looked over to the peddler. You all right? He asked, noticing the man's right arm was wrapped in bandages. Oh, don't worry about it, Otto said. Old wounds, just never quite healed right. Haru nodded and paid him no more mind as he set to work. He carefully drew a magic circle on the parchment with charcoal. Then he placed the raw materials in very specific places. Finally, he placed his hand on the parchment and cast a spell. The circle glowed brightly, and then the materials began to twist and meld together, ultimately forming into an ornate golden longsword, the sapphire embedded as the pommel. Whew, that is some impressive alchemy, my friend. Haru was surprised he knew the term. Alchemy was a specific term used for magic to transform one object into another, and took much greater scientific knowledge about the makeup of what was being worked with than traditional magic. Alchemy wasn't exactly an uncommon term, but one that most people didn't think to use unless they had studied more complex magic. Have you studied magic? Haru asked as he repeated the process to create a sheath for the sword. I've been around. I wouldn't call myself an expert or anything, but I've learned a good deal about a lot of things in my travels. Haru stood and fastened his new sword to his belt. Well, it was a pleasure, Otto. Likewise. Maybe we'll meet again sometime. As Karana left the inn, freshly washed and in a great mood, she overheard the innkeeper talking to one of the patrons about the Duke of Baraka being assassinated. That part didn't really bother her. As a commoner, whatever the nobles got up to rarely affected her, and political assassinations weren't all that uncommon. The weird part was that they said his castle had disappeared, and some claimed to see it flying through the sky. She could only assume that was just a nonsensical rumor, but it did occupy her thoughts as she walked the streets of the city. She was in the restaurant district. She thought it would be nice to have a meal without the sight of Ren inhaling entire animals in front of her for once. As she looked along the rows of eateries for a place that struck her fancy, she noticed a portly, balding angel, evidently the owner of one of the establishments, yelling at a dark elf man wearing a black cloak and a wide-brimmed hat. We don't serve your kind here, knife ears, the man growled. Don't like elves, and I certainly don't like you dark elves. I hear about what goes on in Antivala. I don't need you whoring yourself out or stealing my shit or killing nobody, you hear? Ordinarily, Karana would think something like this was none of her business, but maybe it was her good mood or maybe Ren was rubbing off on her. But she decided to intervene. Something the matter, gentlemen? She asked with a cocky grin as she approached. Oh, now we have a demon here, the restaurateur groaned. This city used to be for the angels, bunch of no good. Karana tuned out the rest of his racist ramblings. Rastoc was one of the most diverse cities in Baraka, the most diverse region of Alkan, the most diverse country in the world. This guy was so sick of seeing other races, he should probably head back to Angelon. All right, calm down, pal, Karana said, patting the man on the back. He recoiled in disgust. Don't touch me, Thorntail! You and your dark elf whore get away from my shop before you scare the customers away. Pretty sure he was doing a fantastic job of that himself. Hey, I'm not trying to get inside. I just heard you arguing and wanted to thank you. See, my friend here is actually very sensitive to shit food, and I was worried that coming to your place he might get that food poisoning that you're so famous for. The man's face turned bright red with rage. Get the hell out of here, he howled, actually taking a swing at Karana, though he wasn't exactly the fittest fighter out there, so she easily avoided the half-hearted assault. All right, I'm going. You coming? She looked at the meek dark elf, who hadn't said a single word that entire time. He nodded and quietly followed her. Thank you, he mumbled as they walked away. There are people like that everywhere, so I'm used to being treated poorly, but I appreciate your kindness. Don't worry about it. Folks like that need to be put in their place sometimes. Dad will find much success in this city if he's only serving angels anyway. So I was looking to get a bite to eat. You want to join me? Oh, I don't have much money. I'll probably just ask around for table scraps. Don't worry about me. Your money's no good here, she insisted. His treat. She showed off the racist man's coin purse she had lifted from him when they were arguing. The dark elf couldn't help but smile. Bunch of filthy ingrates, the restaurant owner grumbled as he walked back inside his establishment. He felt a tickle on the back of his neck. As he went to scratch it, there was a sudden, sharp pain. He yelped and smacked the spot, narrowly missing the spider crawling away. He suddenly began to feel faint, and before he could sit down, he had lost consciousness and collapsed on the floor. Of course, his establishment was empty, so it would be some time before anyone found him. His shopping finished, Haru decided to spend some time at a local tavern. He wasn't much of a drinker, but he knew from his travels that he could often get a good idea of what the people in town were like, as well as find valuable information in a tavern. Immediately, he overheard talk of the Duke of Baraka being killed. He had to wonder how that would affect the lines of trade coming to and from this city. He also heard rumors of the castle taking flight, but he didn't take much stock in that foolishness. Haru quickly became distracted by the commotion going on at a table on the other side of the bar. Miners and townsfolk alike were yelling and cheering drunkenly with smiles on their faces, clustered around a table. He made his way to the table to see what the commotion was about. It appeared they were watching a card game. An attractive young angel woman was playing against a white-haired demon man with yellow eyes and an open shirt. It seemed he was catching the very end of the game as the man revealed his cards to show off his winning hand. The crowd reacted loudly, some cheering and others showing their disappointment. Sorry, beautiful, he smirked. Maybe next time, or if you prefer, next time could be more private. He winked. The girl giggled and rose from her chair. Addressing the audience now, the gambler called out, All right, who's next? 10-1 odds. If anyone here can actually manage to beat me. Somebody here show me a real challenge. He'd locked eyes with Haru. I see a new face here. Why not try your luck? You there, the handsome elf with the mismatched eyes. Haru sighed. Very well. He sat down. What's the minimum bet? 5 silver and a date later. The gambler smiled. Haru raised an eyebrow. I'll bet 10 silver and skip the date. Your loss. I'm a delight. Just ask anyone here. He gestured to the crowd, and there was a roar of agreement. Haru laughed and shook his head. Just deal already, please. So what's your name, stranger? Kirana asked the dark elf after they had ordered their food at a much less racist establishment. I'm Kirana, by the way. Paolo, he said quietly. It's nice to meet you, Kirana. What brings you to Rastoc? Just passing through? My colleague and I are here on business, but we split up to see the city for a few hours. Kirana nodded. About the same here. Well, some of it. I wouldn't call my traveling companions colleagues or what we're doing business, but you get what I mean. There was a long silence then. Paolo didn't seem like much of a talker. Kirana wasn't sure whether to make conversation or sit in silence. Finally, Paolo spoke up. Thank you again for your kindness. It's not often I meet kind people in my travels. Kirana nodded somberly. She could relate. Her childhood wasn't exactly comfortable. She'd grown up a street rat, and her and her brother had to steal and con to survive. She wasn't usually one for expecting much from others. Life can really be a kick in the pants, but believe it or not, there are really good people out there. Her mind immediately went to Ren for some reason. She hadn't known him long, but he seemed like an incredibly honest and kind person. Being around him made her want to do better herself. Ew. She shook the thought off. Why was she getting all sentimental? You're right. Paolo gave a small smile. Not too long ago I was ready to give up, but I met someone who showed me kindness, gave me purpose, a place to belong. I'm so grateful to him, and I'm glad I decided to keep on living, so I could meet kind people like him, and like you. Paolo's cheeks reddened a bit. Karana held back a chuckle. He was cute, if a bit awkward. Looks like the food's here, Karana said, breaking the silence as the waitress approached. Ah, thank you. Paolo, still a little flustered, reached to take his drink from the waitress's hand and accidentally ended up spilling it across the table. The waitress hurriedly set down the food and reached for the rag in her apron. I'll help, Karana said, opening her bag to find something to help sop up the water. Upon looking at the contents, she yelped, suddenly knocking her bag to the ground, her things scattering across the floor, the eclipse orb rolling into the wall as the spider scampered off. Shit! Karana exclaimed, quickly snatching up the orb and stuffing it back in her bag. I hate spiders! She grabbed the rest of her things and sat back in her seat. By now, the waitress had cleaned up the mess. For the rest of the meal, Paolo was silent. Karana assumed that he was just embarrassed about setting off that series of events, but what she failed to notice was the way he kept looking back to her bag. Something was wrong. Haru had played 5 games with this gambler and lost every one. The other patrons consoled him by claiming that no one could ever beat him, but that didn't make sense. Haru knew there was some level of skill involved in these card games, but ultimately they were games of chance. No one could win every single time. Haru eyed the gambler's cocky smirk. You're cheating. I don't know how, but I know you have to be cheating. The gambler frowned. Bold accusation when you don't have any evidence, pal. No one can win every game of chance they play. You're conning these people out of their money, admit it! The crowd began to murmur, questioning the gambler's integrity. He looked around and sighed. Look, if you're gonna treat me like a criminal, then I'm out of here. You've been lovely, Rastoc, but I'll take my games somewhere else. Without another word, the gambler collected his things and left the tavern. As the crowd dispersed, there were several exhausted sighs and tired complaints. Way to go there, scaring off our entertainment, one of the miners said to Haru. How was he the bad guy here? Upset about this turn of events, Haru stormed out to catch the gambler. He found him a ways down the road and approached him. Where do you think you're going? You were conning those people. You owe them their money back. The gambler sighed. Thanks for ruining a good thing for everyone, buddy. Now buzz off. I will not buzz off. You look. The gambler interrupted him. Was I scamming them? Who could say? You certainly can't prove anything, but I was entertaining them. They were having a great time. I was making money. And were they losing some? Sure, but only as much as they were willing to bet. Think of it as a donation to a street performer, or buying tickets to a play. The cost of a good time, alright? You don't just get off with a scam because people had fun while you stole from them. Don't I? It's your word against mine, and they freaking love me. You're just the guy who rained on their parade. Haru was furious at the audacity of this con man. He grabbed him by the collar. Fine, you won't admit to scamming them, but I know you're a cheat. So give me back my 50 silver before I beat it out of you. The gambler smiled. Haru felt a crackle of electricity. Don't threaten me with a good time. Let's say I keep the money and pay you back in the dates you didn't want to bet instead. 5 unforgettable nights with yours truly. I'll even let you bring a friend. He was purposefully egging him on now. Haru knew he shouldn't let his anger get the better of him, but this guy really knew how to push his buttons. He let go of the man's collar and put his hand on his sword. The gambler took a step back and did the same. Just before they could draw their blades, however, Haru heard Karana's voice call out, What is going on here? Both men looked to Karana, who was approaching them. Ryu, what are you doing here? She asked the gambler. Karana? You know each other? Yeah, why are you about to get in a sword fight with my brother? This miscreant was Karana's brother? Looking at them side by side now, Haru felt foolish for not seeing it earlier. The white hair, yellow eyes, short stature, they could practically be twins. This lowlife was scamming the people of Rastoc, myself included, Haru said to Karana as though tattling on a sibling to their parents. Karana sighed. Yeah, he'll do that. Kind of on you for falling for this game in the first place, though. Karana's brother, apparently named Ryu, snickered at this as Haru blushed in embarrassment. That being said, Ryu, give Haru back his money. I don't need him being grumpy all day. Ryu rolled his eyes. Alright, whatever you say, sis. He pulled the 50 silver from his coin purse and tossed it at Haru. It hit him in the chest and scattered to the ground. Catch, Ryu grinned. Haru made a lunge at Ryu, but Kurana put her hand to his chest. Enough! Both of you, just freaking get along. I feel like I'm dealing with children. The two men grumbled indignantly in response, but neither made a move to attack the other. So that was progress. Oh yeah, let me introduce you two to... Kurana looked behind her and realized that Paolo was no longer with her. Where'd that guy run off to? As she looked around, she noticed a man running. Then more people began to run. What was going on? Then she saw what they were running from. A horde of crystal-coated imps. Imps were a type of spirit, born from elemental energies in nature. But unlike their counterpart, fairies, imps were also born of malicious emotion, and would often be violent. It was highly uncommon to see this many in one place. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I should probably go back a bit here, because we haven't been following what Ren was up to this whole time, and you'll see why that's important in a moment. This whole time, Ren had been working in the mines under Dom, the muscular bearded angel who recruited him. Ren's job was to haul out the stone, gems, and mage stone that the miners were unearthing. While Rastoc was well known for its stone maces and gem cutters, their primary export was actually mage stone, an all-purpose magical stone charged with Kara, or magical energy, and easily malleable using magic. It was most commonly seen used as a light source and could also power magical technologies that were beginning to become popular around the world in recent years. Of course, Ren knew none of this, he just thought all the shiny stones were pretty. The Rastoc mines were truly a marvel. Anywhere you looked, the gemstones embedded in the walls would glisten with the light from the mage stones. Ren, of course, ever friendly, was getting to know the miners, chatting with them as he hauled away their spoils for them. Men and women of every race were toiling away, though for the most part they all seemed in good spirits. "I'm back, Uruk! What do you got for me?" Ren greeted the orc miner, who smiled at him, setting his pickaxe down to wave. "Check this thing out!" Uruk said, gesturing towards a massive mage stone embedded in the wall near the floor of the mine. "I've been working this guy loose for a while now. Never seen one so big." Whew, impressive. You need help knocking it out? Uruk shook his head. "No thanks. This is personal now." The two men laughed. "Just stand back and watch Uruk the Great best his greatest foe yet." With an over-exaggerated swing like an orcish folk hero, Uruk slammed his pickaxe down on the rock face around the mage stone, dislodging it. It rolled to the side, revealing a cavernous opening large enough for a grown man to fit through. "What the heck?" Uruk muttered as he and Ren moved to get a closer look into the hole. "I just found a cave back here." Without warning, a small creature erupted from the hole and attached itself to Uruk's face, scratching wildly. Ren quickly tore it off the orc and hurtled against the wall. But in that time, dozens more of the creatures were flooding out of the hole and rushing past them. Stone imps. Imps didn't exactly have a uniform appearance, they were born of their surroundings, so these creatures were made of stone, gems, and mage stone. Everyone unique, some with diamond claws, other with glowing mage stone eyes. All around 3 feet high. Ren had only brought the cursed demon sword with him into the mine. Not that he had thought he would need it, but it was a family heirloom, so he didn't like to leave it unattended for too long. He drew the sword and did his best to stop the imp's advance, but there were too many of them for him to cut down. "What do I do?" Uruk said, horrified. Seeing his new friend's helpless expression, Ren resolved to fix this. He looked to the hole they were flooding out of, and then to Uruk. "I'll take care of this, don't worry." He winked at the orc, and without hesitation leapt into the dark chasm below. And that brings us back to where we were before. Imps running rampant through the streets of Rastoc. Kurana, Haru, and Ryu standing shocked at the sight before them. An imp jumped at Ryu's head, and in a flash he had drawn his blade and sliced it in two. Kurana and Haru drew their blades as well and began to fight off the rampaging imps. "What the heck is happening?" Kurana exclaimed. "Oh, you didn't hear the little stone gremlin convention was coming through this town this weekend?" Ryu joked as he sent a jolt of electricity through the imp crawling at his leg. "I've never heard of this many imps in one place. The conception of a single spirit takes decades. The likelihood of this many coming together is nearly an impossibility." "They're all coming from that direction," Kurana said, looking towards the mines. "I'll try and make my way there and see what's causing this. You two take out as many as you can and try and keep the people safe, if possible." With that, Kurana dashed off, hacking her way through the imps, leaving Ryu and Haru to take care of things. Ryu looked at Haru and grinned. "Well, let's say we place a little wager. Whoever can take out more of these things gets the 50 silver I gave back to you." "That's a nonsensical bet. If I win, I just get to keep my own money, but if you win, you steal it back." Ryu laughed. "I only take bets I know I'll win." "So you were cheating!" "Fine. New bet. If you kill more, then I'll admit I was cheating. And if I kill more, then you have to make your an insufferable ass." Haru couldn't help but smirk. "Fine. I'll take that bet. Get ready to give back all your ill-gotten gains." Whoa. I never said I'd give anything back. Karana arrived at the mines, and sure enough, the imps were flooding out of one of the entrances. She saw a burly angel working to get the miners out to safety. "What's going on here?" she asked him. "No idea," he replied. "We were just working like any other day, and then all of a sudden these things started attacking us and running out into the city. I'm just trying to get all my workers to safety. There's still a few unaccounted for, including a poor guy I hired off the street to work here for a day." Karana sighed. She didn't like playing the hero, but she couldn't just let the city get overrun by imps. "I'll go try and see where they're coming from." "It's too dangerous in there." "I'll be fine. I can handle myself," Karana assured him as she proceeded into the mines. Luckily, the mage stones along the walls kept the place well lit, so she didn't have any trouble finding her way around. She had to slice her way through countless imps, but it was pretty clear which tunnels she had to follow to find the source. As she got closer, they actually began to thin out. Maybe they'd all spilled out onto the streets, and there were only a few stragglers left behind. As she came to the deepest part of the mine, she came across an orc smashing imps to pieces with his pickaxe. That may partially explain why there were less close to the source if this guy was taken care of. "What are you doing way back here?" Karana asked him. "I did this," he said desperately, tears welling in his eyes. "I can't leave until it's done. The new guy jumped in that hole there where they're coming from, but he hasn't come back. I can't leave him either." Karana saw the large hole he was referring to that seemed to lead to a large cavern. This just kept getting more annoying. "Keep doing what you're doing. I'll go see what the new guy's up to. Or if he's dead, I'll bring you something back to remember him by." Against her better judgment, Karana jumped into the hole. She used wind magic to soften her landing and found herself in a massive cavern, the walls covered in mage stone and gems. It was almost hard to see through the multicolored lights shining, but as her eyes adjusted, she saw it, a huge imp, crowned in gemstones with mage stone for eyes. Compared to the other imps, it was a titan several times the size of Karana, and when it opens its mouth, it vomited a torrent of smaller imps. Now things were making more sense. This wasn't thousands of imps that had been hiding under here, rather a single powerful imp capable of smalling smaller ones and controlling them like a hive mind. As she considered this, she realized that the giant creature was fighting something. She approached them and saw Ren cleaving through the tiny imps with his katana. "Ren, what the heck are you doing here?" Ren turned to see her and waved. "Hey, Karana, could you help me out here? These things just keep coming no matter how many I slice through." While he was distracted, the imps crashed over him like a wave and knocked him to the ground. Karana jumped to ask him and blasted them off him with a powerful gust of wind magic. She helped him up as she simultaneously fought off the onslaught of imps. She could figure out how he got here later. For now, they need to defeat this thing. Take out the leader and the rest of the hive mind should follow. We shouldn't waste our time with these little ones. It's the big one making them. We just need to take that out and the rest should stop fighting. You're so smart, Karana. I never even thought of that. Are you serious? How long have you been down here just fighting endless waves of these things? Ren thought hard. Like the whole time. It's been a while. Karana shook her head. Okay, we can use some backup. Buy me a few seconds and I can summon a hummus. Oh, I'd love some hummus. I'm starving after fighting this whole time. No, you idiot. Hummus, a creature from the void. It's summoning magic. Never mind, it's fine. Just keep them off me. That Ren could do. As he stood in front of Karana and fought off the imps, she charged magical energy into her rune sword and traced a magic circle in the air. She channeled her Kara through it and reached out into the void to find a hummus to make a temporary pact with. The summoning circle shattered, and a large green bird erupted from the void with a massive gust of wind, blowing back the imps and nearly knocking Ren off his feet. It looked at Karana as if asking her what she wanted it to do. Take care of the little ones so we can take down the big guy, she ordered. The bird nodded and flew towards the imps and flapped its great wings, sending razor gales to slice them apart. Whoa, that is so cool! How did you do that? It was just some basic summoning. It's not all that hard once you know how to do it. Well, for people that can use magic, at least. Magic's so neat. I gotta work twice as hard now to pull my weight. I've tried to cut it a few times, but it's pretty quick for its side, so it keeps on dodging me. Well, there's two of us now, so no matter how nimble it is, we should be able to land some hits. I just need to get in close. No problem! Ren smiled as he grabbed Karana suddenly by the back of her shirt and pants and hurled her towards the large imp with all his might. Karana began to regret ever agreeing to travel with Ren in those moments as she soared through the air, but it was too late for regrets now. She had a job to do, and this idiot was what she was working with. The imp seemed as startled as she was to see a woman barreling towards it at Mach speed from the sky. Too stunned to move, it seemed. It was an easy target. She landed a firm kick right into its nose and vaulted over its head, landing behind its back. She stabbed her blades into his back and howled out in pain, then swung around attempting to hit her, but she was too quick for it. Enraged now, its movements were sloppy and easy to read. Krana crept her distance and used magic to kite it towards her and keep it off balance. A shock here, a fireball there, nothing big or flashy, just enough to keep the tension. She knew from a previous attack that her blades were too short to do significant damage to it. She just needed to waste time until... there he was. The blade of the cursed demon's sword connected with the imp's shoulder and effortlessly cut through the beast cleanly. As the giant imp let out his final death rattle, the smaller imps fell lifelessly to the ground. Krana dispelled her summon, thanking it for its work before sending it back home to the void. She looked at Ren, who was grinning ear to ear. "Never throw me like that again without warning me." "I got you close, didn't I?" Ren said innocently. "You nearly tore my pants. Clothes aren't cheap." "Sorry. You can have an extra pair of mine if you want." "Like they'd fit me." Krana grumbled as the two returned to look up through the hole they had fallen through. They saw the head of the orc peering through. "Ren, what did you do? They all stopped moving." "Hey, Uruk! I told you I'd take care of it. Can you throw us a rope or something? I'm kind of stuck down here." Haru and Ryu fell onto their butts in exhaustion when the imps finally stopped attacking, breathing heavily and covered in sweat. "Final tally," Ryu panted. 196 for me, Haru said honestly. Ryu looked at him in disbelief. "Seriously?" He weakly hefted his sword up and stabbed an already lifeless imp through the head. 197. Haru shook his head. "That doesn't count and you know it. We tied. I was counting yours too because I knew you'd cheat." "All right, fine," Ryu sighed, leaning back against the wall. "Neither of us win. But for the record, I didn't cheat. You're just really bad at cards." "Well then, for the record, I'm not an insufferable ass. You just bring out the worst in people." The two men laughed weakly through their exhaustion. Thank you so much for continuing to listen to A Dragon with Feathery Wings. This was a big episode. Took a lot of work. I added quite a few new things with background music and additional faces for the character images. So hopefully you enjoyed all that. If you did, feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you want to see where the adventures of these characters go in the future. And if you'd like, you can also check me out at twitch.tv/chaosofgreed. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.